To Claire Mercer. Now, Claire's husband was killed in 2019 on a stretch of the M1 motorway, which had no hard shoulder. Claire now campaigns against smart motorways. Claire, morning to you.
Morning.
How do you feel hearing that Highways England wants to include these rules on smart motorways?
I think it's 16 years too late. Smart motorways, the first smart motorway came in 1995, but everyone refers to 2005, 2006 as being the real start of smart motorways. So in every other aspect, you're told that the highways code sticks and it is the law of the road. But this fundamental change to the most dangerous roads that we have hasn't been updated for 16 years. And at the moment, Highways England, when they're having to defend themselves in court, they're saying, one, that they have no duty of care to the motorist. A coroner actually had to ask a Highways England solicitor to repeat that because she couldn't believe it. And two, that it is your responsibility to make sure that you know what's going on. But it's not in the highway code. And the government advice, there's a page on the government website that says how to drive on a smart motorway. It now says withdrawn December 2020. They've just withdrawn their advice. So the government has withdrawn the advice. Highways England have never updated the advice. So how are you meant to educate yourself?
For all of our listeners, you come to this from a place of knowledge. Jason, as I said when I introduced you, your husband was killed in 2019 on a stretch of the M1 with no hard shoulder. I know today would have been his birthday, I understand as well.
Yes.
So thank you for talking to me today. He would have been 46. What happened to him?
He was on the M1 in Sheffield near Meadowall. He had a minor collision with another motorist. They were at a sign that said no hard shoulder for 4 miles. They couldn't see the next refuge area, because it was a mile out of sight. 18 months ago, we knew far less about smart motorways than we do now. Me and Jason had never discussed them. I didn't know we passed one every day on our way to work. I should have been in the car that day, but I wasn't well. And I can only assume that they didn't know what to do. So they knew they had to stop to exchange details. So they pulled over to the left as far as they could. But the crash barrier stopped them getting the cars right out of the lane. And a 30-foot drop over the barrier stopped them climbing the barrier, which happens in a lot of these cases. People say, why didn't they get over the barrier? And in a lot of cases, there is no over the barrier.
So they had nowhere else to go other than stand on that hard shoulder.
Yes, yep. And they were taking photos and exchanging details, and a lorry ploughed into them and killed them instantly. And at no point did Highways England's technology pick them up. It didn't pick them up while they were alive, and it didn't pick them up when they were dead on the road, stopping the entire motorway. There's meant to be this technology built in that every smart motorway has that can tell when the whole motorway has stopped. So it can tell you when there's been a massive problem, but even that didn't work because they didn't die in the right place. They didn't trigger the loops. It relied on members of the public phoning in and saying, for the love of God, close the motorways. When they came to me, they said to me, the police, when they turned up on my doorstep, they said, can you describe your husband? And I said, if you've got my husband, you know. And they said, I'm afraid you have to understand the utter carnage at the scene. And things were thrown a long way. And we don't know what belongs to who. So I said, well, my husband is very distinctive. And they asked me to describe a tattoo around his neck. And I did. And they said, it's your husband that we've got. And they had to ask if there was other people in the car. I never got some of his possessions back. We assumed they went up a road sweeper. This is the utter devastation that was at the scene. And this wonderful, all singing, all dancing technology picked absolutely none of it up. And people are trying to tell me, they shouldn't have done what they did, or that was just bad luck. Well, there was an 8-year-old boy killed in Birmingham. What did he do wrong? Nargis Begum was trying to climb over the barrier when she died. Highways England keep trying to turn it round and blame the drivers, and it's not. We need the hard shoulders. They can have their gadgets, they can have their cameras, but they need to be on top of the hard shoulder.
Tell me, a Department of Transport spokesman has said the safety of drivers and passengers using these routes remains the Transport Secretary's personal priority. He will press Highways England to deliver improvements as soon as possible. And you're aware, Claire, that there was a review ordered by Grant Shapps, who is the Transport Secretary, last March on how to make them safer. One of the recommendations, there were 18, was to update this highway code to provide more guidance. Since last March, 18 recommendations. This is the first I've heard of one of the recommendations. You're campaigning. Do you know of any others that have gone through yet?
No, absolutely none of it. And although Grant Shapps ordered the review, it was Highways England that did it. And that is public fact. He ordered Highways England to do it. So Highways England reviewed themselves. So it was always going to be a compromise, because when it starts off with, we're going to bring in changes, that already says they're not going to scrap them. They're going to adapt what's there. So Highways England reviewed themselves, and guess what? They found that they passed. They just needed to tweak a few things. So it was just a complete and utter toothless waste of exercise. And we seem to be doing that time after time. We're paying a lot of people very high wages to be busy. And then absolutely everything that they suggest is unenforceable by law. And we're just not changing anything. I've been waiting for South Yorkshire Police in Sheffield to receive the coroner's file from Sheffield Coroners. And after a month, a post from Sheffield to Sheffield still hasn't arrived for an investigation. In that time, there's been 5 serious collisions on smart motorways just because the post is bad. And I've been pressing South Yorkshire Police for a year to investigate. And we're just paying people to do busy work while people are dying and being seriously injured.
Claire, what do you make of comments like Jeremy Phillips, who's the head of road safety, I think at Highways England, saying this update is about helping motorists understand exactly how modern motorways and high-speed roads operate. The updated edition of the Highways Code will help inform the next generation of road users, as well as giving important updates to those with many miles under their belt to help us all stay safer. The implication being here that it is up to drivers, really, and those who use the roads, motorists, to understand these motorways, because as you say, that they're not going to be scrapped. There's no indication that that's on the cards. No. All they do is turn it around on the driver every time. These recommendations that they're referring to, they're such genius ideas as you must have a fully charged phone for every trip. You must check your vehicle for every single journey. Do you think anybody, even just Highways England, does that every time? So it already negates that. They're just ridiculous. And how? This is one thing that I refer to every time. You've already mentioned it. How do you educate a broken car into moving to the next safe place? If a car stops, it stops. And these new cars, they're 90% computer. When the computer freezes, the car stops. We get 10 messages a week saying my car just stopped in the 3rd lane. I had my kids in the back. It was dark. It was raining. And also, a very important thing is the cameras were mentioned. Well, at Jason's inquest and Nargis's inquest, it was they had to confess because they were under oath. And this is exactly what they said. They're not CCTV camera operators. They're control room operators, and they only occasionally glance at the screen. And that's after an alarm has been sounded. So you're not sat waiting to be, you think you're waiting to be picked up by a camera, but they're not watching. They've got so many other tasks to do. They're not watching these cameras. Claire Mercer, wife of Jason, who was killed in 2019 on a smart motorway. And I know today, I mean, you every time I've heard you speak in passion, with passion and purpose. I know today will be one of many difficult days for you. So thank you for spending time with me to talk about this. I know you know it's important. So thank you. Thank you.